We are moving on to a new section and a new concept. If you remember, the overall big idea is why are graphs helpful? And specifically today, we're looking at linear relationships and if they are proportional and if we can find a constant rate of change. So if a relationship has a straight line graph, it is called a linear relationship. And all linear relationships have a constant rate of change. Let's look at your first example. This should be on page 172. I want to know if this relationship is linear. In other words, if I took these points and graphed them on a coordinate plane, would it have a straight line? So I know that a linear relationship has a constant rate of change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze both sides of this table to see if we have a constant rate of change. Well, on the left side, you can see we're increasing by 3 each time. So it's definitely constant on this side. On the other side, we are decreasing, but you can see that each time it is decreasing by the same amount. It is decreasing by 30. So we have a constant change on this side, and we have a constant change on this side. So we do have what is called a constant rate of change. So we can say that this is linear. We know this is linear because we have a constant rate of change. Well, what exactly is the constant rate of change? Well, the constant rate of change is the change, which we represent by this delta symbol, the change in y over the change in x. Well, if the balance is the y, because it depends on the number of transactions, and the number of transactions would be x, we noticed that the change in y was negative 30 each time. So I have negative 30 for my change in y. My change in x was 3 each time, so that's over 3. And if I simplify that, I get negative 10 over 1, or simply negative 10. So I know that this is a linear relationship, and I know that the constant rate of change in this linear relationship is negative 10. Let's look at one more example. Clear some of this out of the way. In this example, I have hours and a charge. So if I look on the left here, I can see that this is increasing by 1 each time. If I look on the right, it looks like it's increasing by 8 each time. So I do have a constant increase here. I do have a constant increase here, so it does have a constant rate of change. Once again, I want to know what that constant rate of change is, and I can find the change in y over the change in x. Well, the change in y, we're going to call the charge y, because the charge depends on how many hours. So hours is independent, so that's going to be our x variable, and when we graph it, it would go on the x-axis. The charge is dependent, so it's going to be the y variable, and it would go on the y-axis when we graphed it. And I want the change in y over the change in x. The change in y was plus 8 each time. The change in x was plus 1 each time, so I have 8 over 1, or 8. My constant rate of change is 8. Go ahead and try the next 2 examples on your own. Now, one of the got examples is going to be a graph. And remember, we can tell if a graph is linear if the line is straight. Remember, a straight line graph is linear. Go ahead and try the got it's at the bottom of the page.